Live and insiders live from COP21.
Today's the 10th of December, and yesterday was a really important day because of the text of COP21.
So a new text came out and we asked some experts about their opinions on the new text.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Check it out.
What do you think right now? What's going on right now, or what is the...
So what we've seen yesterday in the evening is very long statements of parties on the draft negotiating text that was presented by the French presidency of the COP. And what continued afterwards was negotiations throughout the night, where again parties tried to shape what the next iteration of the draft text will look like. And the next iteration of the draft text is supposed to come out at some point during today. At the moment we think perhaps in the afternoon, where we again hope that the number of brackets, cross brackets always indicate that there's not yet agreement, will go down. So far we've also seen that actually few parties are satisfied with the text right now. There are concerns about the ambitiousness of the draft as it stands. But it's a little bit early yet to judge. There's a lot of things going on, I think, behind the scenes, as usual at these COPs. People talking to each other, developing draft text, submitting it to the presidency as proposals. And we'll need to see in the afternoon how the text looks then.
And are you still positive right now? Do you think we will have a good and ambitious agreement that's maybe at some part legally binding?
I think everybody's clear in his or her mind that the draft agreement that's on the table will be an international treaty. As such, it will be binding. And then we need to look at each of the individual provisions, how they are formulated, how binding they will be in the sense of being precise, of being prescriptive. Is there a shall in there? Is there only a should in there? And that's very much still in flux. I think that's where some of the concerns also arise. What I can say as a legal expert, also going through the last iterations of the text, I think that the legal quality of the text has improved quite a bit. It now more reads like a treaty.
We really want to know what's your position and the feeling in terms of the current step of the negotiation text.
Yeah, well, we're still more or less in the beginning of the battle, in the sense that the text that came out still has broadly two options. One is an option that leads us to a text that is an agreement but has very little content. The other option is to have an agreement that has at least some meaningful content. It will never be the ideal thing, because that we've all along passed, but it can be a text that we can work with, that we as NGOs, as civil society, can use to move forward and to push for stronger domestic action in our countries.
And what are the main concerns?
Well, there's many concerns, but one of the main concerns relates to the level of ambition of this agreement, which relates to what is called the long-term goal, both whether we are going towards 2 degrees or a 1.5 degree world, whether we're going to phase out the use of fossil fuels, but it also relates to the shorter-term action. As you know, there's been a number of pledges, INDCs as they call it, on the table, and they now altogether will probably lead us to a 3 degree world. We know that we need to take further actions to ensure that we go to a 2 degree world. That action needs to happen immediately. Right after Paris, countries will need to go back to their offices and say, okay, how can we improve our pledges? How can we make them stronger? And that needs to happen well before they start to be implemented, meaning we want them to be finalized by 2018.
So as an NGO, what do you think is the position of your NGO can, and also the position of the EU in terms of the current?
Yes, so I mean, as NGOs, we actually share with the European Union a number of concerns in relation to the level of ambition that this agreement needs, and the level of accounting that needs to be put in place to ensure that countries implement what is being put on the table. At the same time, where we differ from the EU is that we feel that the European Union can do much more in terms of giving financial support to poor countries, to engage in climate action, but also to support adaptation. And we also feel that the EU needs to be much more stronger in recognizing the needs of the poor communities and poor people in terms of loss and damage, for there where we cannot prevent climate change to happen.
Okay, I just have one final question for you, and that is, if you were to give one key message regarding your concerns on the text, what would that be?
The key message is that after the Paris conference, governments will need to start working very hard to increase the level of ambition so as to avoid dangerous climate change.
So we are now on Thursday, 10th of December, and let's say the general mood is still good. If we know that people are really discussing and if the process is going on, etc., we have many concerns. It looks that what we have asked since many years, which is first equity, which is to take into account people who are already hit by climate change, is not really taken into consideration, because all these issues linked to equity, all these issues linked to financing for adaptation, for example, clear targets for financing, clear targets for reduction, all these issues are quite weak. And so we have some good news on some things, but we are concerned about the lack of a pre-review on ambition, because if there is no pre-review, we have just only a few years for a target of 1.5. We had just a few years for using fossil fuel. The text does not speak about fossil fuel in it, which is really the basis of the problematic. We are also concerned with something quite new, which raised yesterday, which is the way they can open, for example, carbon markets to land use offsetting and all these things. Because we know that if they open this door, it will threaten really the livelihood of many, many poor people.